Awesome. Thanks for having me. I think my preference is always like long prose. I think just being able to sustain a story, of a certain length, um, is what's the word now? Intriguing for me, um, and to be able to sustain a story from start, middle, up till the very end. I think it takes a certain kind of dedication and commitment to be able to do that. And I like the challenge of sometimes writing and then you pause because you can remember what chapter one, was really about, or chapter two, or chapter three, and you have to go back and connect those dots again. So I think, yeah, my preference is always long prose. Yeah, I think missing television for a good number of years, made me channel my own inner entertainment button, if you will, so that I'm able to entertain myself. What I miss from not being able to watch television because the church wouldn't allow it at the time, allow me create my own drama in my head, create my own entertainment, my own cartoon series or whatever, So it was my own TV pretty much. Yeah. And I still feel that way even now, sometimes, just dispense with all them Netflix and Amazon Prime or whatever, I just bring out my laptop and create my own drama. I suspect it's inevitable. Like it's not something you can help or control. It's not involuntary. It just happens that the places you've been or your current location kind of like influences you. But at least in my case, I think that's what has happened. Even though I've stayed true to my Nigerianness in my writing, and I still crave for that Nigerian style, quote and unquote. But there are definitely things that factors and elements that I never thought I'd be writing about that I see myself, writing about today: the cold, the weather, the climate, the snow, those sort of things. Like, I mean, um, even just, you know, um, language or style of speaking or whatever, somehow would find its way into my writing. And so if I hadn't been here in Canada, for instance, there's certain things I never would have thought I'd be writing, right? So even with my latest book, Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, the title, of course, is from the city I live now. So if I'd never been in Saskatoon, there definitely wouldn't have been a Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, right? Uh, well, if that question is like trying to ask me what the secret of my writing is, maybe it's like just drinking Gary and granola with a lot of milk. I think. But on a serious note, I guess it's the sensation of being talented and not using that talent. Being scared that if you don't use it, you would lose it. That fear just kind of keeps me writing. And there are lots of stories around us, and I don't want to say me, right? There are lots of stories around us all the time, and it's always a lost opportunity when we don't create time, to document these things, these stories. And again, that's motivation for me. Like, um, should I stop at my first book, my second? Or should I have stopped at my first book or my second or my third? then the stories in the fifth, fourth, blah 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 wouldn't have existed, right? So um, that thing is inside of me. It keeps burning, it keeps pushing, it stays restless until I'm able to create something. Yeah, because I think when you look at it, the greater population would be, those who fall within a certain wage brackets, those you wouldn't categorize as rich or very rich or billionaires or millionaires, right? Those are the vast majority of people that inhabit the earth, and so don't we owe it to ourselves and to them to be able to tell their stories, because all of the the lavishness and flamboyancy we see in television, maybe even in books sometimes, and very few people will get to experience that. um, a limited number of people would get to experience that. Let me rephrase. So um, what then happens to all the other people who don't live that life? And are there lessons to be learned from being ordinary? Um, um, and for people who cross the boundary, you go from being poor, and then to being wealthy or super rich. Um, Sometimes people forget those experiences, but I think there's a need to remind us. Um, um, Not because I want to place any burden on anyone, burden of guilt that you're rich, or you can pay your bills without stress, but just to remind ourselves of like where we were, and so that our empathy stays alive, and I think that that's also important. There are lots of football fans all over the world. Very recently, the great Messi relocated to the US to play football, and I saw or soccer, and I saw recently on TV how many the great number of celebrities who went there to watch him play. So football is huge all over the world. And at the time of writing it, of course, that was still the case. And I thought it would be something fun to do, to create a story around football. And again, because I won't say I'm the greatest of soccer fans, so I also saw it as a challenge for myself to be able to do a believable story about football, knowing that I'm definitely not one of those people who wake up every Saturday morning or Sunday morning and I must watch a game or something. But to be able to go into that world, and do something believable, was a challenge for me, and I hope I was successful in doing that. Recently I've been reading like murder mysteries, and I only recently discovered a Canadian author called Anthony P. Docker. So I'm reading Living Skies now, and I have read Going to Beautiful, but it's something I've never done, so it's fascinating and maybe something I might try someday. Well, I think like it's the death of talent, right? So it'd be a shame if somebody were talented and all they needed to move on to the next stage was talking with somebody who could inspire them, right? So I I don't want to fail in that responsibility. If anyone ever came to me and they needed to learn something from me or just hear my story, something to motivate them to keep writing, it's not it doesn't cost me anything, so why shouldn't I do it? And for aspiring writers, it's not, the life of a writer is not, always rosy. Um, you might even get into it and start to question yourself, like, oh, why didn't I stick to my pharmacy, or why didn't I speak to my law, or whatever it is. But like I said, it's important that stories are told, and if you have the talent, it tugs at your heart, that you just keep doing it, and who knows, who knows. I don't think that the cover of a book should matter really. Like, even if I saw a book and the cover was torn, the younger me, of course, I'd read lots of books with the covers torn, and like when I started reading that, I realized how amazing those books were. So if I hadn't read them because they didn't have covers at all, then I wouldn't have discovered the stories inside those pages. So yeah, the covers shouldn't matter, but because I think even creating cover art itself is art, right? I think it's important that whoever finds that as a passion for them should be able to do it well and excel in it. So the synergy, or symbiotic relationship that exists between the cover art designer and the writer and the publisher, like, those relationships are important, and it creates jobs and opportunities for the people who do these amazing book covers, and so and then again, for those people who because it's all about marketing, right? At the end of the day, the writer wants to sell, in addition to telling his story, he also wants to sell his books. So if there are people out there that are attracted by beautiful covers, then why don't you just give them the beautiful cover that they need? I think OkadaBooks is doing such an amazing job. I know that there was a time, and I think that we're still living in those times. When it's an endorsement, to be in OkadaBooks' radar. So I think that giving young writers that platform, giving writers that platform, is such a big deal, and I can only say, kudos, keep doing it. There definitely is a place for what OkadaBooks does, and were they to stop, there'll be a huge gap.